Hi everyone, welcome back today. We're diving into a story that's packed with betrayal, heartbreak, and resilience. Claire's picture-perfect marriage takes a shocking turn when she uncovers her husband Ryan's affair with his coworker Jenna. But the drama doesn't stop there. Jenna's unexpected pregnancy sends their lives into chaos, forcing all three to face painful truths and impossible choices. Stick around as we unravel this emotional roller coaster of love, lies, and the fight to start over. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this story. It was the summer of 2019 in the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, a town where everybody knew everybody, or at least thought they did. The streets were lined with charming homes, perfectly manicured lawns, and white picket fences that seemed to symbolize the ideal life. But behind those closed doors, secrets that would shake even the most seasoned gossip at the town's coffee shop. Our story starts with Claire Bennett, a 32-year-old art teacher at the local high school. Claire wasn't someone who drew much attention. Her soft-spoken nature and dedication to her students made her the kind of person everyone respected, but few really knew. She had a warm smile, chestnut brown hair that framed her face, and a penchant for floral dresses that reflected her hopeful outlook on life. She was married to Ryan Bennett, a charismatic real estate agent known for his quick wit and undeniable charm. With his broad shoulders and movie star grin, Ryan could sell a snowball in a snowstorm, and he often did. Together, Claire and Ryan seemed like the perfect couple, high school sweethearts who had built a life full of laughter and shared dreams. But perfection, as we all know, is often an illusion. Enter Jenna Hall, a strikingly confident woman with a sharp bob haircut and a knack for getting what she wanted. Jenna was Ryan's coworker at the real estate firm, and her arrival in town a year ago had turned heads. She was bold, ambitious, and carried an air of mystery that made her the subject of countless whispered conversations. Despite her glamorous exterior, there was something about Jenna that felt calculated, as though every move she made was part of a larger plan. Jenna had been partnered with Ryan on several lucrative deals, and their professional chemistry was undeniable. They were a powerhouse duo, raking in commissions and securing their reputation as the top agents in town. But their success came with its share of rumors. Claire had heard the whispers about late-night meetings, lingering glances, but she dismissed them as the idle gossip of bored suburbanites. After all, she trusted Ryan. They had a history, a home, and a bond that she believed was unshakable. It all started with the little things. Ryan had been coming home later than usual, brushing off Claire's questions with vague excuses about a big deal in the works. He seemed distracted, his usual attentiveness replaced by an almost robotic politeness. Claire, ever the optimist, chalked it up to work stress. But deep down, she felt a gnawing sense of unease that she couldn't quite put into words. One evening, as Claire was setting the table for dinner, she noticed Ryan's phone buzzing on the counter. Normally, she wouldn't have given it a second thought. Privacy was important in their marriage, but the name flashing on the screen stopped her cold. Jenna Hall. "Hey, your phone's going off," Claire called out, trying to sound casual as Ryan walked into the room. His reaction was almost imperceptible, a slight hesitation before he picked up the phone and declined the call, but it was enough to make her heart sink. "Work stuff," he said, flashing her a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll deal with it later." Claire nodded, forcing a smile of her own, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The next day, while running errands in town, Claire found herself at the local coffee shop. As she waited for her order, she overheard a conversation between two women at the next table. "I saw Ryan and Jenna at the Maplewood last night," one of them whispered, her voice dripping with intrigue. "They looked awfully cozy for a business meeting." Claire's stomach churned. The Maplewood was an upscale restaurant known for its romantic ambiance, a far cry from the usual chain restaurants Ryan frequented with clients. She told herself it was probably nothing, that the women were just jumping to conclusions, but the doubt lingered, growing stronger with each passing day. That evening, Claire decided to address her concerns. As Ryan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, she took a deep breath and joined him. "Ryan," she began, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty, "is there something you're not telling me?" Ryan looked up, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. You've been distant lately, and I overheard someone say they saw you at the Maplewood with Jenna." It just, it doesn't sit right with me." Ryan's expression shifted, a mix of irritation and defensiveness. "Claire, come on. You know how people in this town love to talk. Jenna and I were meeting with a client. It's part of the job." Claire searched his face for any sign of deception, but found none. Still, the unease remained, lurking beneath the surface. Weeks passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm. Or so it seemed. Claire tried to focus on her art classes and her students, pushing her doubts aside. But one afternoon, while cleaning up the studio, she found something that brought those doubts crashing back. Tucked into Ryan's jacket pocket, which he had left hanging on a chair, was a receipt from the Maplewood. The date matched the night she had overheard the gossip, and the total suggested a meal for two. Her heart pounded as she stared at the slip of paper, her mind racing with questions. Who had he been with? Why hadn't he mentioned it? She wanted to confront him then and there, but fear held her back. What if she was wrong? What if she was right? Unsure of what to do, Claire turned to her best friend Emily. For advice, Emily was everything Claire wasn't: bold, outspoken, and fiercely protective of those she loved. When Claire showed her the receipt, Emily didn't mince words. "Claire, this isn't normal. You need to talk to him, like really talk to him." "But what if it's just a misunderstanding?" Claire replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "And what if it's not you deserve to know the truth?" That night, as Claire lay awake in bed, her mind refused to quiet. She replayed every interaction with Ryan, every moment that had seemed off. The doubt was no longer a whisper, it was a deafening roar, and as much as she wanted to believe in their love, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply, irrevocably wrong. To be continued. The days that followed were a blur of unease for Claire. She tried her best to stay busy, hoping that the constant movement would drown out the noise in her head. But no matter how many papers she graded or paintings she worked on, the doubts about her marriage clung to her like a shadow. Ryan, for his part, seemed oblivious to her growing anxiety. If anything, his behavior became harder to read. He'd alternate between moments of warmth, surprising Claire with her favorite coffee, or cracking jokes like the Ryan she knew, and periods of detachment, where he'd spend hours staring at his phone or locked in his office. It was as if he could sense her suspicions and was trying to deflect them with fleeting acts of affection. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Claire decided to test the waters. She had prepared Ryan's favorite, chicken parmesan, with the hope that a quiet meal together might bring some clarity. "So," she began, trying to keep her tone light, "any big deals you're working on right now?" Ryan looked up from his plate, his fork paused midair. "A couple, yeah. Why?" "Oh, no reason," Claire said, keeping her smile intact. "Just curious. You've been spending so much time at work lately. I thought maybe there was something exciting happening." Ryan chuckled, but it sounded forced. "You know how it is. The market's competitive right now. Gotta stay ahead of the game." Claire nodded, but her mind was racing. His response was too polished, too rehearsed. She wanted to push further, but the tension in the room was already palpable. The next day, Claire met Emily for coffee. Her best friend wasted no time getting straight to the point. "Claire, have you done any digging yet?" Emily asked, her tone hushed but insistent. "Digging," Claire replied, raising an eyebrow. "You know, checking his phone, his emails, anything. I'm not saying you should go full-on private investigator, but sometimes you need proof to figure out what's really going on." Claire hesitated. "I don't know, Em. That feels wrong, like I'd be crossing a line." Emily leaned in, her expression serious. "And what if he's already crossed it? Look, I get it. You don't want to be that person. But sometimes protecting yourself means asking the hard questions, even if the answers hurt." Claire left their meeting feeling torn. On one hand, Emily's advice made sense. On the other, the idea of violating Ryan's privacy felt like a betrayal of her own values. But the seed had been planted. That evening, Claire sat on the couch scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone when a notification popped up on Ryan's laptop. He had left it open on the coffee table, a rare oversight. The notification was from Jenna, and the preview of the message read, "I can't stop thinking about last night." Claire's heart stopped. For a moment, the world around her seemed to blur. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen, debating what to do. Finally, unable to resist, she clicked on the message. The full conversation was laid out before her. While most of it was professional, discussing clients' upcoming showings, there were moments that hinted at something more. Phrases like, "You always know how to make me smile," and "I miss our late-night talks," jumped out like flashing neon signs. Claire closed the laptop, her chest tight with a mix of anger and despair. She had hoped that the doubts were just in her head. But this felt like confirmation. The next morning, Claire decided she couldn't keep this to herself any longer. As Ryan came into the kitchen, still groggy from sleep, she placed the laptop on the counter. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but cold. Ryan froze, his eyes flicking between her and the laptop. "What's this about?" "You and Jenna," Claire replied, crossing her arms. "What's going on?" Ryan's face darkened. "Claire, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," she shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been hiding something." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Jenna and we've gotten close, but it's not what you're thinking. We're just friends. She's been going through a tough time, and I've been there for her. That's all." Claire stared at him, her stomach churning. "Do you really expect me to believe that I saw the messages, Ryan? You've been lying to me." "Claire, he began, but she cut him off. "Save it," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't even know who you are anymore." The confrontation left a chasm between them. Ryan tried to carry on as though nothing had happened, but the tension was impossible to ignore. Claire found herself pulling away, retreating into her art studio for hours at a time to avoid the weight of his presence. Meanwhile, Emily continued to push Claire to take action. "You need to think about yourself," she insisted. "If he's not willing to come clean, you can't just sit around waiting for him to change." Claire knew she was right, but the idea of confronting the truth, of potentially ending her marriage, was terrifying. She had built her life around Ryan, and the thought of losing it all felt unbearable. At this point, the story shifts slightly to give viewers a glimpse into Jenna's world. While she appeared confident and composed on the surface, her life was far from perfect. She was recently divorced, struggling to make a name for herself in the competitive real estate market and desperate for validation. Her connection with Ryan had started innocently enough, late nights working on deals, sharing stories about their lives. But over time, those moments blurred the lines between professional and personal. Jenna convinced herself that Ryan's attention was harmless, that their bond didn't mean anything. But deep down, she knew better. After weeks of tension, Claire finally reached her breaking point. She couldn't keep living in limbo, pretending that everything was fine. One evening, as she sat in her studio staring at a half-finished painting, she made a decision. It was time to take control of her life. She called Emily. "I need your help," she said, her voice firm. "I can't do this alone." Emily didn't hesitate. "I've got you, Claire. Let's figure this out together." The section ends with Claire beginning to take small but significant steps toward uncovering the full truth. She starts keeping a journal, documenting her suspicions and her feelings. She reaches out to a counselor, hoping to gain clarity about her emotions and her next steps. And most importantly, she begins to focus on herself, her art, her friendships, and the parts of her life that Ryan had overshadowed for so long. It's a slow, painful process, but for the first time in months, Claire feels a glimmer of hope. She's no longer waiting for Ryan to change. She's changing for herself. If you're as hooked on this story as I am, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Trust me, things are only getting more intense from here. It had been a week since Claire decided to reclaim control over her life, and while she felt stronger, the tension at home had only grown worse. Ryan's attempts to brush off her concerns had turned into a cold war of avoidance. They spoke in clipped sentences, the warmth that once filled their home replaced by a suffocating silence. Claire could sense that something big was coming. She just didn't know when or how everything would unravel. One Friday afternoon, Claire was tidying up their shared office when she noticed an unfamiliar envelope tucked under a stack of papers. It wasn't sealed, and curiosity got the better of her. Inside, she found 2 tickets to a luxury spa resort, dated for the upcoming weekend. Her hands trembled as she processed the implications Ryan hadn't mentioned any plans, and the second ticket, it certainly wasn't for her. Feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak, Claire decided she needed answers. But instead of confronting Ryan immediately, she chose a different path, one that would force the truth into the open. That evening, Claire called Emily and laid everything out. I found tickets to a spa resort for this weekend. He hasn't said a word to me about it. Emily didn't miss a beat. You know what this means, right? He's going with her. Claire's throat tightened. Hearing someone else say, it made the possibility feel even more real. You need to go there, Emily continued. Show up, see it for yourself. If he's lying, there's no way he can talk his way out of it. Claire hesitated. The thought of seeing Ryan with Jenna, of having her worst fears confirmed, was almost too much to bear. But deep down, she knew Emily was right. If she didn't face the truth head-on, she'd never be able to move forward. Saturday morning arrived, and Claire found herself standing outside the sprawling gates of the resort. Her heart pounded in her chest as she made her way inside, her eyes scanning the luxurious lobby for any sign of Ryan. She didn't have to look far. In the distance, she saw him, sitting by the pool with Jenna. They were laughing, their heads close together, and the sight sent a surge of anger through Claire's veins. Taking a deep breath, she marched over to them. Ryan! She called out, her voice cutting through the tranquil atmosphere like a thunderclap. Both Ryan and Jenna froze, their expressions morphing from shock to guilt in an instant. Claire, what are you doing here? Ryan stammered, standing up so quickly that he nearly knocked over his drink. I could ask you the same thing, Claire shot back, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and hurt. She turned to Jenna, her eyes blazing. So this is what all those late nights and secret messages were about? A weekend getaway with her? Jenna opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked to Ryan, as if hoping he'd somehow fix the situation. Claire, let's not do this here, Ryan pleaded, his voice low. We can talk about this later. No, Ryan, we're talking about it now, Claire insisted. You've been lying to me for months. I want the truth, all of it. The confrontation drew the attention of nearby guests, and for a moment, the three of them stood frozen in the awkward spotlight. Finally, Ryan sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, he said. You want the truth? Yes, I've been spending time with Jenna, but it's not what you think. Claire's laugh was bitter. Not what I think you're here together, at a resort, behind my back. What am I supposed to think, Ryan? Ryan ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling to explain himself. Claire, things have been difficult between us. I felt like we were drifting apart, and Jenna, she listened. She understood me in a way I didn't think anyone could anymore. Don't you dare put this on me, Claire snapped. If you felt like we were drifting apart, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you try to fix things instead of running to her? I tried, Ryan shouted, his frustration boiling over. But every time I brought it up, you shut me out. You buried yourself in your art, in your work, and I felt invisible. Claire's voice cracked as she replied, So your solution was to betray me? Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Jenna, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. Claire, I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, her tone laced with guilt. I never wanted to come between you two. Then why did you? Claire demanded, her eyes brimming with tears. If you cared so much about not hurting me, why did you let this happen? Jenna looked away, unable to meet Claire's gaze. The confrontation ended with Claire walking away, her heart shattered. She couldn't bear to stay at the resort a moment longer. Emily picked her up, and as they drove back to Willow Creek, Claire broke down, sobbing into her hands. Why wasn't I enough for him? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Emily gripped the steering wheel tightly. This isn't about you, Claire. It's about him, his selfishness, his inability to appreciate what he had. Back at home, Claire was overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something. Instead, she sat down at her desk and poured her heart into her journal, writing down everything she had felt and witnessed. For hours, she wrote, the act of putting her thoughts on paper, giving her a sense of clarity. By the time she was finished, she knew what she had to do. The next morning, Ryan returned home. He looked exhausted, guilt etched into every line of his face. "Claire," he began, "I'm so sorry I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Claire replied, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "And now I have to decide if I can ever trust you again." Ryan nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, I promise." But Claire wasn't sure if promises were enough anymore. This story is heating up and we're far from finished. If you've made it this far, make sure to like, share, and comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There's more to this journey than you can imagine. After their heated conversation, Claire and Ryan found themselves in an unspoken truce. They moved through their days like strangers passing in the same house, polite, distant, and careful not to provoke another argument. But the silence between them only amplified the storm brewing beneath the surface. For Claire, every interaction with Ryan felt like walking on a tightrope. She wanted answers, closure, something that would make sense of the betrayal she'd uncovered. For Ryan, guilt hung heavy in the air, but he struggled to find the words to repair what he'd broken. The once vibrant home they had built together was now filled with a suffocating stillness. One evening, Ryan suggested they go out for dinner, a rare attempt to break the ice. Claire was hesitant but agreed, thinking it might be a chance to confront everything that had been left unsaid. They chose a quiet Italian restaurant on the edge of town, a place that held fond memories of simpler times. The meal started awkwardly, with long stretches of silence, punctuated by forced smiles and half-hearted small talk. But as the night wore on, Ryan began to open up. "I know I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "But I want to fix this, Claire. I want us to work." Claire's heart ached at his words. Part of her longed to believe him, to hold on to the hope that they could rebuild what they'd lost. But another part of her couldn't forget the image of him and Jenna by the pool, laughing as if she didn't exist. "I need time, Ryan," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to figure out if I can trust you again." Ryan nodded, his expression somber. "I understand I'll do whatever it takes." Just as Claire began to entertain the possibility of reconciliation, fate threw another curveball her way. A few days later, she was at the local grocery store when she ran into Jenna. The encounter was as awkward as it was unexpected. "Claire," Jenna said, her voice hesitant but sincere, "can we talk?" Claire's first instinct was to walk away, but curiosity and a desire for closure kept her rooted in place. "What is there to talk about, Jenna?" she asked, her tone icy. Jenna took a deep breath. "I just want to apologize. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused you, but there's something you need to know." Claire crossed her arms, her skepticism evident. "And what's that?" Jenna hesitated, as if weighing the consequences of her next words. Finally, she said, "Ryan wasn't the only one who lied. I wasn't honest with him either. He doesn't know, but I'm pregnant." The words hit Claire like a freight train. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, and she had to steady herself against the cart to keep from falling. "You're what?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Pregnant," Jenna repeated, her eyes filling with tears. "And before you ask, yes, it's Ryan's." That night, Claire confronted Ryan with Jenna's revelation. The moment he walked through the door, she was waiting for him, her arms crossed and her expression a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "Jenna's pregnant," she said, skipping any pretense of small talk. Ryan froze, his face draining of color. "What? That's not possible. She never—" "She told me herself," Claire interrupted, her voice sharp. "And she says it's yours." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his expression shifting from shock to panic. "Claire, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "That doesn't change anything," Claire shot back. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You didn't just betray me. You've destroyed everything we built together." Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but Claire didn't give him the chance. "I can't do this anymore, Ryan. I won't. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." After the confrontation, Claire knew she needed space to process everything. She packed a bag and left the house, seeking refuge at Emily's place. Her best friend welcomed her with open arms, offering the comfort and support Claire so desperately needed. For the first time in weeks, Claire allowed herself to let go. She cried, venting her anger and frustration as Emily listened without judgment. "You're stronger than this," Emily told her. "You don't need him. You've always been enough, Claire. Don't let his mistakes define you." The words resonated, planting a seed of determination in Claire's heart. She realized that she couldn't let Ryan's betrayal consume her. She needed to focus on herself, on rebuilding her life and finding her own happiness. Over the next few weeks, Claire threw herself into her art, pouring all her pain and emotions onto the canvas. Her work took on a new intensity, drawing the attention of a local gallery owner who offered to showcase her pieces in an upcoming exhibition. The opportunity reignited a sense of purpose in Claire. For the first time in months, she felt like she was reclaiming a part of herself that had been lost. Meanwhile, Ryan was forced to confront the reality of his actions. Jenna's pregnancy added a new layer of complexity to an already fragile situation, and he struggled to navigate the fallout. He tried reaching out to Claire, leaving voicemails and sending messages, but she kept her distance. One afternoon, while preparing for her exhibition, Claire ran into an old acquaintance, Ethan, a fellow artist she had known in college. Ethan was charming and down to earth, with an easy smile that instantly put Claire at ease. They spent hours catching up, reminiscing about their shared past and exchanging stories about their artistic journeys. For Claire, the encounter was a welcome distraction, a reminder that there was a world beyond the pain of her failed marriage. As their friendship grew, Ethan became a source of encouragement and inspiration, pushing Claire to take risks in her art and in her life. And though she wasn't ready to entertain the idea of a new relationship, she couldn't deny the spark of hope he brought into her world. As the date of Claire's exhibition approached, Ryan showed up unannounced at her studio. He looked haggard, his usual confidence replaced by a palpable sense of desperation. "Claire," he began, his voice raw, "I need to talk to you." Claire hesitated, her heart torn between anger and pity. "What is it, Ryan?" "I've made so many mistakes," he admitted. "I let you down in ways I can never take back, but I need you to know that I still love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "It's too late. Ryan, love isn't enough to erase what you've done. I've spent so much of my life trying to make us work, but I can't keep losing myself in the process." Ryan nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand. I'm sorry, Claire. For everything." As he walked away, Claire felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. It wasn't the ending she had hoped for, but it was the one she needed. What would you do if faced with a betrayal like Claire's? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next chapter of this gripping story. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Claire's art exhibition was just days away, and the preparation had become her sanctuary. Every brushstroke was a reminder that she was more than the sum of her heartbreak, more than the woman Ryan had betrayed. Her studio buzzed with activity, a whirlwind of creativity that felt like a shield against the chaos of her personal life. But even amidst the flurry of activity, there was an undercurrent of tension. Claire knew she wasn't out of the woods. Yet Ryan's confession and Jenna's pregnancy still loomed over her like dark clouds, and the weight of it all threatened to break through her carefully constructed defenses. The day before the exhibition, Claire stopped by a local cafe for a much-needed break. As she waited for her order, she spotted Jenna sitting at a corner table. Claire considered walking away, but something inside her snapped. She couldn't keep avoiding the woman who had upended her life. Claire approached the table, her heart pounding. Jenna looked up, startled, but quickly masked her surprise. "Claire," Jenna said, her tone cautious, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Claire replied, her voice steady but laced with steel. She sat down without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." Jenna sighed, setting her coffee cup down. "I didn't think you'd want to see me again." "Believe me, I didn't," Claire said. "But I can't keep pretending you don't exist. You've become a part of this mess, whether I like it or not." For a moment, the two women sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Finally, Jenna broke the silence. "I know I've made mistakes," she said, her voice soft. "But I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I didn't set out to hurt you." Claire's jaw tightened. "Intentions don't matter, Jenna. Actions do, and your actions have consequences." "I know," Jenna said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've been trying to figure out how to move forward, how to make things right, but there's no guidebook for this." Claire studied her for a moment, torn between anger and pity. "There's no making this right," she said finally. "But there's moving forward, and that starts with honesty." That evening, Ryan showed up at Claire's studio unannounced. He looked disheveled, his usual charm replaced by an air of desperation. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, his voice urgent. Claire didn't bother hiding her irritation. "What is it now, Ryan?" "I can't lose you," he said, stepping closer. "I've been thinking about everything, about us, and I realize how badly I messed up. I want to fix this." Claire laughed bitterly. "You've already said that, Ryan, but words don't mean anything without actions, and so far, all I've seen are excuses." Ryan flinched, but he pressed on. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve." Claire stared at him, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and something she couldn't quite name. "It's not that simple," she said finally. "You broke something in me, Ryan, and I don't know if it can ever be fixed." The night of Claire's exhibition arrived, and the gallery was packed with friends, family, and art enthusiasts. Claire stood in the center of it all, radiating a quiet confidence that masked the storm raging inside her. Her pieces were a reflection of her journey, bold, raw, and unapologetically honest. Each painting told a story of pain, resilience, and the search for identity. Viewers moved through the gallery, murmuring their admiration, but Claire's focus was elsewhere. As she mingled with the crowd, she spotted Ethan standing by one of her larger canvases. He caught her eye and smiled, a gesture that sent a ripple of warmth through her. "You've outdone yourself," Ethan said as she joined him. "These pieces are incredible." "Thank you," Claire said, her cheeks flushing. "It means a lot coming from you." They talked for a while, their conversation light and easy, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had defined Claire's interactions with Ryan. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope, a glimpse of what life could be if she let herself move on. As the evening wound down, Claire was surprised to see Ryan enter the gallery. He looked out of place, his discomfort evident as he navigated the crowd. "What are you doing here?" Claire asked, her tone sharp as he approached her. "I came to support you," Ryan said, his voice sincere. "Your work is incredible, Claire. It's powerful." Claire raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And what you thought showing up here would fix everything?" Ryan sighed. "No, I just wanted to be here for you. Even if it's too late for us, I wanted you to know how proud I am of you." For a moment, Claire felt a pang of sadness. Despite everything, there was a part of her that still cared for the man she had once loved, but she knew that their time had passed. "Thank you," she said finally, "but I think it's best if you leave." Ryan nodded, his expression filled with regret. "Take care of yourself, Claire." As he walked away, Claire felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the resolution she had hoped for, but it was enough. In the weeks that followed, Claire continued to focus on her art and her healing. She spent more time with Ethan, their friendship deepening as they encouraged each other to take creative risks. Though she wasn't ready for a new relationship, she allowed herself to entertain the possibility of happiness in the future. Ryan, meanwhile, began to come to terms with his actions. He worked to establish a co-parenting arrangement with Jenna, determined to be a part of their child's life. It wasn't the life he had envisioned, but it was a step toward redemption. For Claire, the journey wasn't over. There were still moments of doubt, still nights when the pain of the past threatened to overwhelm her, But she faced each day with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to build a life that was wholly her own. If you've been captivated by Claire's journey, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. There's still more to uncover as Claire takes the next steps in her story. Claire had started to settle into a rhythm. The exhibition's success had propelled her forward, giving her a sense of purpose that had been absent for months. She was beginning to feel like herself again, or at least a version of herself that wasn't defined by Ryan's betrayal. But just when she thought she was turning a corner, a new complication emerged. One evening, as she was wrapping up at the studio, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's important." Claire's heart sank. She had no doubt who it was, Jenna. Against her better judgment, she replied, "What is it? Meet me at Willow Park tonight." The request felt ominous, but curiosity and the lingering need for closure drove Claire to agree. She arrived at the park just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the empty benches. Jenna was waiting, her arms crossed and her face etched with tension. "Thanks for coming," Jenna began, her voice tight. "Get to the point," Claire replied, crossing her arms. "What do you want?" Jenna hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure they were alone. "It's about Ryan," she said finally. "There's something you need to know." Claire's stomach churned. What now? Jenna took a deep breath. "He's been lying to both of us about everything." "What are you talking about?" Claire asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Jenna pulled out her phone and opened a series of messages. She handed it to Claire, who read the texts with growing disbelief. They were from Ryan, messages sent to Jenna after their confrontation at the resort. In them, Ryan had promised to be there for her and the baby, but had also admitted that he was still trying to win Claire back. He spoke of keeping his options open and not wanting to burn bridges. Claire's hands shook as she returned the phone. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I'm tired of being part of his games," Jenna replied. "I thought he cared about me about the baby, but he's just been using both of us to cover his own ass." The words hit Claire like a punch to the gut. She had known Ryan was manipulative, but this was a new low. That night, Claire waited for Ryan to come home. She sat in the living room, the texts Jenna had shown her still fresh in her mind. When Ryan walked through the door, she didn't give him a chance to settle. "Care to explain these?" she said, holding up her phone with screenshots of the messages Jenna had forwarded. Ryan froze, his face going pale. "Where did you get those?" "Does it matter?" Claire snapped. "You've been lying to both of us this whole time? What the hell is wrong with you, Ryan?" "I can explain," he began, but Claire cut him off. "Don't," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I'm done listening to your excuses. You've been stringing me along, trying to manipulate Jenna. And for what? So you can keep living this fantasy where you don't have to face the consequences of your actions." Ryan's jaw tightened, his facade of charm crumbling. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he admitted. "I was trying to figure out what I wanted." "What you wanted?" Claire interrupted, her voice rising. "What about what I wanted, Ryan? What about the life we built together? Or was that just a convenience for you?" Ryan didn't respond, his silence speaking louder than any defense he could have mustered. The confrontation left Claire emotionally drained, but also resolute. She realized that she couldn't keep holding on to the hope that Ryan would change. It was time to let go. The next morning, she called her lawyer. "I want to move forward with the divorce," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. It was a painful step, but also a liberating one. For the first time, Claire felt like she was taking control of her life, rather than letting Ryan dictate the terms. Meanwhile, Jenna was grappling with her own choices. Ryan's betrayal had left her questioning everything, but she knew one thing for certain. She didn't want him in her life, or her child's, if he wasn't going to be fully committed. She sent Ryan a message. "I'm moving forward without you. If you want to be part of this child's life, you need to prove you're worthy. Otherwise, stay away." It was a bold move, but one that gave her a sense of empowerment. Like Claire, she was beginning to realize her own strength. As Claire packed up the remnants of her life with Ryan, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She thought about the woman she had been before, naive, trusting, and so focused on pleasing others that she had lost sight of herself. But that woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had faced betrayal and heartbreak and come out the other side. Several weeks later, Claire's gallery called to inform her that one of her pieces had been selected for a prestigious art show in the city. It was a turning point for her career, a validation of her talent and resilience. At the opening night of the show, Claire stood among a crowd of admirers, her heart swelling with pride. She spotted Ethan across the room, and their eyes met. He raised his glass in a silent toast, and Claire couldn't help but smile. As Claire moved forward, Ryan found himself increasingly isolated. His attempts to reconcile with Claire had failed, and Jenna had made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate his manipulations. For the first time, Ryan was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He sought therapy, hoping to understand the choices that had led him to destroy the relationships that had mattered most. It was a humbling experience, but one that marked the beginning of his own journey toward redemption. The story ends with Claire standing in her studio, a blank canvas before her. She picks up a brush, the possibilities of her new life stretching out before her like an uncharted landscape. As she begins to paint, the weight of the past lifts. Replaced by a sense of hope and determination, Claire knows the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she feels ready to embrace it. If you've been inspired by Claire's journey, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And make sure to subscribe so you can join me for more stories that remind us of the strength we all have within. Claire's world had become a mosaic of healing and uncertainty. She was rebuilding her life piece by piece, but the shadows of her past still lingered. While Ryan had made himself scarce, his presence still loomed in unexpected ways. Through mutual acquaintances, unanswered questions, and the memories that Claire couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. One evening, Claire received an envelope in the mail. The handwriting was unmistakable. Ryan's inside was a letter, a mixture of apologies and justifications that stirred a whirlwind of emotions. "I never wanted to hurt you," the letter began. "I was lost, Claire. I know that's not an excuse, but I need you to understand that I'm trying to be better." As she read the words, Claire felt an overwhelming mix of anger and sadness. The part of her that had once yearned for his explanations now felt hollow. The letter wasn't closure. It was a reminder of the pain she was working so hard to leave behind. She folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step toward letting go. While Claire was grappling with Ryan's attempts to reinsert himself into her life, Jenna faced a crisis of her own. A routine prenatal checkup revealed complications with her pregnancy, throwing her into a state of panic. The doctor's words rang in her ears. "You need to reduce your stress levels. It's crucial for both you and the baby." Jenna realized that her life's chaos, Ryan's manipulations, the judgment from the community, and her own unresolved guilt, was taking a toll not just on her, but on her unborn child. She made the difficult decision to cut ties with Ryan entirely. "Ryan," she said during a tense phone call, "this isn't working. You've caused enough damage, and I can't keep letting you disrupt my life. From now on, I'm handling this on my own." Ryan protested, but Jenna stood firm. It was the first time she had truly taken control of her own narrative, and despite her fear, she felt a sense of liberation. Inspired by Jenna's decision, Claire realized it was time to reclaim her power as well. She had spent too long allowing Ryan's actions to define her story. She decided to meet with him one last time, not to seek closure, but to draw a line in the sand. They met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where their voices wouldn't carry. Ryan looked nervous, his usual confidence replaced by an uneasiness that betrayed his guilt. "Why am I here, Claire?" he asked as they sat across from each other. Claire took a deep breath. "Because I need you to hear this from me. This is the last time we're having this conversation. Ryan, I'm moving on with my life, and I'm not looking back." Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but Claire held up a hand to stop him. "You've apologized. You've explained yourself, but it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the pain you caused." Her voice softened, but her resolve was unshakable. "I don't hate you, Ryan, but I can't let you be part of my life anymore, not in the way you want. This is goodbye." For a moment, Ryan said nothing. Then he nodded, his expression a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I understand," he said quietly. "I hope you find happiness, Claire. You deserve it." That night, Claire returned home feeling lighter than she had in months. The conversation with Ryan had been painful, but it was a necessary step in her journey. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Thinking of you tonight. Let me know if you need anything." Claire smiled, her heart warming at the thought of him. Ethan had been a constant presence in her life, offering support and encouragement without expecting anything in return. Their friendship had grown into something deeper, though neither of them had spoken it aloud. The next day, Claire arrived at her studio to find a surprise waiting for her, a bouquet of flowers and a note from Ethan. The note read, "For the strongest person I know, keep creating magic." Claire felt a rush of emotion as she read the words. Ethan's kindness and quiet confidence had become a balm for her wounded heart. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by her past, a future where she could let someone in again. Meanwhile, Ryan had begun to confront the reality of his actions. Therapy sessions forced him to examine the choices that had led him to betray Claire and manipulate Jenna. He realized that his need for validation had stemmed from his own insecurities, and while it was too late to fix his relationship with Claire, he was determined to become a better person for himself and his child. Ryan reached out to Jenna, not to plead for a second chance, but to offer genuine support. "I know I've been a mess," he admitted during their conversation. "But I want to be there for the baby. I want to do this the right way." Jenna was skeptical, but she agreed to let Ryan prove himself. It was a tentative step forward, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. The following week, Claire unveiled a new series of paintings at a charity auction. The pieces were a reflection of her journey, raw, emotional, and unflinchingly honest. The event was a resounding success, with all proceeds going to support local art programs. As Claire stood on the stage, addressing the crowd, she felt a surge of pride and gratitude. She spoke about the power of art to heal, to transform pain into something beautiful. The audience erupted into applause, and Claire knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Ethan was in the crowd, his eyes shining with admiration. After the event, he approached her, his usual easygoing demeanor giving way to something more serious. "You were amazing tonight," he said. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," Claire replied, her voice soft. "I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan hesitated, then took her hand. "Claire, I know you've been through so much, and I don't want to rush anything, but I care about you a lot, and I'm here whenever you're ready." Claire felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "Maybe not for everything, but for this, for us." The story ends with Claire and Ethan walking hand in hand through the city, the first rays of dawn casting a golden glow over the streets Claire had faced, heartbreak, betrayal, and doubt. But she had emerged stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace the future. As they stopped to admire the sunrise, Claire couldn't help but smile. The journey had been painful, but it had led her here, to a place of hope, love, and endless possibilities. If Claire's journey has inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and comment below, and make sure to subscribe for more stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. There's always a new chapter waiting to be written. The city was alive with the hum of possibility, but for Claire, every step forward still felt like a delicate balance. She had started to find her footing again, her relationship with Ethan blossoming into something steady and comforting, but even as she began to heal, echoes of her past lingered. Ryan's attempts at redemption, and Jenna's continued presence in their intertwined lives served as constant reminders of everything that had unraveled. Claire had spent weeks working on her next art series, a project inspired by resilience and the strength it takes to rebuild. Yet, as she added the final touches to her canvas one evening, a call disrupted her focus. It was Jenna. "I need your help," Jenna said, her voice fraught with urgency. Reluctantly, Claire met Jenna at a nearby diner, The air between them was charged with tension, their history too tangled to ignore. Jenna sat fidgeting with a cup of coffee, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of her anxiety. "It's Ryan," Jenna said, breaking the silence. "He's trying to be there for the baby, but he's spiraling. I think he's overwhelmed. And honestly, I don't know what to do." Claire's first instinct was to push Jenna away, to remind her that Ryan was no longer her responsibility, but something in Jenna's eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, stopped her. "What do you expect me to do?" Claire asked, her tone firm but not unkind. "I don't know," Jenna admitted. "But you know him better than anyone. Maybe you can talk to him, help him see what's at stake before it's too late." Claire hesitated. Helping Ryan felt like a step backward, but the thought of him jeopardizing his relationship with his child gave her pause. If there was a chance she could prevent further damage, wasn't it worth trying? Claire found Ryan at the park, sitting on a bench and staring blankly at the horizon. He looked tired, the weight of his choices etched into his features. "Jenna says you're struggling," Claire said as she approached him. Ryan looked up, startled. "She told you that?" "She's worried about you. And frankly, so am I," Claire replied. "You need to pull yourself together, Ryan. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about your child." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm trying, Claire. I really am. But every time I think I'm making progress, I get hit with the reality of everything I've lost." Claire sat beside him, her expression softening. "I'm not here to make you feel worse, but you have to stop wallowing in regret. You can't change the past, Ryan. All you can do is show up for the future." Ryan nodded, her words striking a chord. "I don't know if I can ever make things right," he admitted, "but I want to try." As Ryan began to take steps toward accountability, Jenna experienced her own moment of clarity. The complications with her pregnancy had forced her to slow down and reevaluate her priorities. For years, she had been driven by ambition, chasing success at the expense of her own well-being. But now, with a baby on the way, she realized she needed to make changes, not just for her child, but for herself. She reached out to Claire again, this time not out of desperation but gratitude. "I just wanted to say thank you," Jenna said during their call. "For talking to Ryan, I don't think he would have listened to me." Claire was taken aback by the sincerity in Jenna's voice. "I didn't do it for him," she said. "I did it for the baby, and maybe a little for myself. I needed to know that he could step up." While the drama surrounding Ryan and Jenna unfolded, Claire found solace in her growing bond with Ethan. He was a grounding presence in her life, always knowing when to push her forward and when to give her space. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, Ethan broached a subject they had both been avoiding. "Claire," he said, his voice careful, "where do you see us going?" Claire paused, her gaze fixed on the rippling water. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know I want you in my life. You've been everything I didn't know I needed." Ethan smiled, his relief evident. "That's enough for me," he said, "for now." Ryan's therapy sessions had begun to yield results, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. One day, during a particularly emotional session, his therapist asked him a question that shook him to his core. "What do you want your child to remember about you?" The question lingered in Ryan's mind long after the session ended. He realized that his legacy was at stake, not in the form of material success, but in the values he passed down to his child. Determined to make amends, he reached out to Jenna with a heartfelt apology. "I know I've let you down," he said during their meeting, "but I want to be there for you and the baby. Whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it." Jenna nodded, her expression guarded but hopeful. "Actions speak louder than words. Ryan, show me you mean it." As the baby's due date approached, a surprising twist brought Claire, Ryan, and Jenna together. Jenna experienced complications during labor, and Ryan called Claire in a panic. "She needs someone there," he said, "someone who can keep me grounded." Claire hesitated, but ultimately agreed. At the hospital, the three of them found themselves in an unexpected moment of unity. As Jenna gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Ryan held her hand while Claire stood nearby, offering quiet support. It was a moment of redemption for Ryan, a moment of closure for Claire, and a moment of new beginnings for Jenna. In the weeks that followed, the tangled web of their lives began to untangle. Ryan stepped into his role as a father with a newfound sense of purpose. Jenna embraced motherhood with grace, finally finding the balance she had been searching for. And Claire. She moved forward with a heart that was lighter than it had been in years. Her relationship with Ethan continued to flourish, and her art became a testament to her resilience and growth. What would you have done in Claire's shoes? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the final chapter of this emotional journey. There's still more to uncover as we approach the end. The weeks after the birth of Jenna's baby were a whirlwind of emotions for everyone involved. Jenna named her daughter Lily, and despite the unconventional circumstances, Ryan stepped up to be the father Lily deserved. For Jenna, motherhood was a transformative experience. She found herself leaning into her newfound purpose, even as she worked to redefine her relationship with Ryan, not as lovers, but as co-parents. Meanwhile, Claire had fully embraced her life with Ethan. Their connection had grown stronger with time, and for the first time in years, Claire felt like she was truly living for herself. But even as she moved forward, the scars of her past hadn't fully healed. And as life began to settle, a storm brewed just beneath the surface, waiting for its moment to strike. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Claire heard a knock at her studio door. She opened it to find Ryan standing there, his expression hesitant but resolute. "What do you want, Ryan?" Claire asked, her voice steady but guarded. "I need to talk to you," he said. "It's important." Claire sighed, stepping aside to let him in. "You've got 5 minutes." Ryan paced the room, struggling to find the right words. Finally, he blurted out, "I'm moving out of town." Claire blinked, surprised. Why?" "I need a fresh start," Ryan explained. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize that staying in this town, it's not healthy for me or for anyone else." Claire studied him for a moment. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I owe you an apology," Ryan said, his voice soft. "Not just for what I did to us, but for how I've handled everything since I've hurt you, Claire, and I've hurt Jenna. I can't change that, but I want to take responsibility for it." His words caught Claire off guard. For so long, she had waited for an apology like this, one that felt genuine, unburdened by excuses. But now that it had come, she realized it didn't matter as much as she thought it would. "I appreciate that," she said finally. "But the truth is, I've already moved on." "You should too." Ryan nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "I'm glad to hear that, Claire. You deserve to be happy." While Ryan prepared to leave, Jenna found herself facing a critical decision. Ryan had proposed a co-parenting plan that involved him visiting Lily every few months, but Jenna wasn't convinced it was enough. "You can't just pop in and out of her life, Ryan," Jenna said during one of their meetings. "If you're going to be her father, you need to be consistent." "I know," Ryan said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But I can't stay here, Jenna. I've explained why." "And I understand," Jenna replied. "But this isn't about you or me anymore. It's about Lily. She needs stability." The conversation ended with no resolution, leaving Jenna to grapple with the question of what was best for her daughter. For the first time, she felt the full weight of her responsibility as a parent, a responsibility that didn't leave room for compromise. As Ryan's departure loomed, Claire found herself leaning more on Ethan. He had become her rock, the one person who could make her laugh even on the hardest days. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of her apartment, Ethan surprised her. "I've been thinking," he began, a nervous edge to his voice. "We've been spending so much time together, and it feels right. So I was wondering, would you want to move in with me?" Claire's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this, but as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she realized she didn't need to think twice. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I would love that." The decision marked a new chapter in their relationship, one that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. For Claire, it was a step toward rebuilding her life on her own terms. Ryan's departure from town became a surprisingly emotional event. Jenna hosted a small gathering at her home, inviting only close friends and family. Claire debated whether to attend, but ultimately decided it was the right thing to do, for closure, if nothing else. The atmosphere was bittersweet as everyone said their goodbyes. Jenna handed Ryan a framed photo of Lily, her eyes brimming with tears. "Don't forget who you're leaving behind," she said quietly. "I won't," Ryan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Jenna, for everything." When it was Claire's turn to say goodbye, the two of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "Good luck, Ryan," Claire said finally. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Ryan smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "You too, Claire. Take care of yourself." Ryan's absence brought a sense of relief to both Claire and Jenna, though it also left a void that would take time to fill. Jenna threw herself into motherhood, finding joy in the small moments with Lily Claire, meanwhile focused on her art and her growing relationship with Ethan. For the first time in years, both women felt like they were in control of their own destinies. Just when it seemed like everything had settled, a letter arrived at Claire's door. It was from Ryan, sent from his new address in another state. Inside was a handwritten note and a check. The note read, "Claire, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, that it's time to move on. This is my way of trying to do that. I've sold our old house, and I want you to have half of the proceeds. You earned it. Thank you for everything. Ryan." Claire stared at the check, her emotions swirling. It wasn't about the money. It was about the gesture. For the first time, she felt like Ryan was truly letting go. The story ends with Claire and Ethan moving into their new home. As they unpack boxes and decorate the space together, Claire feels a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She stands in her new studio, a blank canvas before her, and picks up a brush. Ethan appears in the doorway, a cup of coffee in hand. "Ready to start your next masterpiece?" he asks with a smile. Claire nods, her heart full. "Ready." As the screen fades to black, the sound of Claire's brush strokes fills the air, a symbol of her journey from heartbreak to healing and the endless possibilities that lie ahead. If you've been inspired by Claire's journey, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation. And remember, every ending is just the beginning of something new. The morning light poured into Claire's new home, casting warm golden hues across the walls. She stood in the kitchen, sipping her coffee as she watched Ethan hum softly while unpacking a box of dishes. It was a peaceful scene, a far cry from the chaos and heartbreak that had consumed her life not so long ago. Her journey had been anything but smooth, but as she stood there, she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced her pain head-on, made the hard choices, and come out stronger for it. For the first time in years, she felt free to be herself, to live her life on her own terms, and to embrace the love she had found with Ethan. In another part of the country, Ryan was settling into his new life. He had found a small but charming apartment and landed a job at a real estate agency. It wasn't the glamorous life he once envisioned, but it was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild without the weight of his past mistakes. His relationship with Jenna had stabilized into a respectful co-parenting dynamic. Ryan made regular trips back to see Lily, slowly earning Jenna's trust through his actions rather than his words. While their relationship would never be romantic again, it was rooted in a shared commitment to their daughter. One afternoon, as Ryan held Lily in his arms, he found himself smiling. For all the pain and mistakes, this little girl was a reminder that something good had come from it all. He vowed to be the father she deserved, a promise he intended to keep. For Jenna, life as a single mother was a balancing act, but one she handled with surprising grace. Lily became her world, a source of joy and strength that made the challenges feel worthwhile. With the help of her family and a few close friends, Jenna managed to build a stable life for herself and her daughter. Her career took a backseat to motherhood, but Jenna found fulfillment in ways she hadn't anticipated. She started volunteering at a local community center, helping other single parents navigate the challenges she had faced. In giving back, she found a renewed sense of purpose, a purpose that extended far beyond her professional ambitions. Meanwhile, Claire's art career flourished. Her newest series, titled Resilience in Color, had been picked up by a major gallery in the city, earning her critical acclaim. The pieces were deeply personal, capturing the raw emotions of her journey, from heartbreak to healing, from loss to love. At the gallery's opening night, Claire stood before a crowd of admirers, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. She gave a short speech, her voice steady as she reflected on her journey. "This series isn't just about pain," she said. "It's about what comes after. It's about finding beauty in the broken pieces and having the courage to start over." The audience erupted into applause, and Claire felt a sense of closure. Her art had always been her sanctuary, but now it was something more, a testament to her strength and her ability to transform even the darkest moments into something beautiful. As Claire's career soared, so did her relationship with Ethan. Moving in together had deepened their bond, and they supported each other in ways that felt effortless and natural. Ethan encouraged Claire to take risks in her work, while Claire inspired Ethan to embrace his own creative passions. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Ethan turned to Claire with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "this feels like the start of something big." Claire smiled, her heart swelling. "It does, doesn't it?" For the first time in a long time, Claire wasn't afraid of what the future held. She was ready to embrace it, one day at a time. Months later, fate brought Claire and Jenna together once more. They ran into each other at the park, where Jenna was playing with Lily. Claire was walking with Ethan, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Jenna approached, Lily perched on her hip. "Claire," she said, smiling warmly, "it's good to see you." "You too," Claire replied, genuinely glad to see Jenna thriving. They talked briefly, exchanging updates on their lives. There was no tension, no lingering resentment, just two women who had found their way through the chaos and come out stronger on the other side. As they parted ways, Claire felt a sense of peace. The tangled web that had once connected their lives was finally untangling, leaving room for growth, healing, and hope. The story ends with Claire back in her studio, a blank canvas before her. The room is filled with light, the walls adorned with her finished pieces, a visual diary of her journey. She picks up a brush, her mind racing with possibilities. This new chapter of her life is unwritten, but for the first time, that excites her. She's no longer defined by her past, no longer tethered to the pain that once consumed her. Ethan steps into the room, a cup of coffee in hand. "What are you working on?" he asks, his voice filled with curiosity. "Something new," Claire replies, smiling. "Something just for me." As the scene fades to black, Claire's brush glides across the canvas, creating the first strokes of a masterpiece. It's a symbol of everything she's overcome and everything she has yet to discover. Thank you for joining me on Claire's incredible journey of resilience, growth, and transformation. If you love this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. There are so many more stories to tell, stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us all of the power we hold within. See you in the next video.